Today, June 14th, 2004, we are interviewing Paul Ludwig, a native of Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, and a retired ophthalmologist of Crawfordsville, Indiana. Paul, you went into the Navy July 1943.
That's correct.
And where did you report?
I reported to a railroad station in Newark, New Jersey, and they took me up to Hobart College in Geneva, New York for enrollment in the V-12, the Navy V-12 program.
You didn't have to go through basic training then?
No.
And I understand you spent 2 semesters at Hobart College.
I spent 2 semesters at Hobart College and then was transferred to the NROTC program at the University of North Carolina, from which I graduated and received a BA degree in mathematics and also commissioned in the Navy as an ensign.
As an ensign, did you have any active service after you were commissioned?
Yes, I was assigned to a patrol craft in Kwajalein Island in the Marshall Island Atoll.
How long were you there?
I was there, well, I graduated in October 1945, and I was sent to Kwajalein immediately after that, and was discharged from the Navy in June 1946. And then I spent time in the reserve after that.
What was your duty aboard the ship when you were patrolling the Kwajalein Islands?
I was a commissary officer, the communications officer, morale officer, and that's about all I can remember.
Sounds like you had all the usual duties
right.
of the
brand
newly minted commissioned officers.
Right. Yeah.
I think it was the same whether you were in the Army or the Navy. So you were in the reserve, and then December 1950.
Yes, the war. The Korean War was started in June 1950.
June 25th, 1950.
Right.
Where were you June 25th, 1950?
I was a chemist, working as a chemist for American Cyanamid in Stamford, Connecticut.
Were you single at the time?
Yes, I was.
And it was on a Sunday. I guess you were probably goofing off, and the news came over at about noon, if I remember correctly.
Right. I remember more about about Pearl Harbor than I do the onset of the Korean War.
Well, tell me, where were you December 7th, 1950?
I was December 7th, 1941.
41, sorry.
I was in my dining room painting the baseboard of the floor with my father.
That was a shock.
Yes, it was.
Okay, December 1950. Where did you report for active duty?
I was assigned to recommission a minesweeper in Orange, Texas.
To recommission it. You were the CO?
No.
The skipper?
No, I was a communications officer again.
Communications officer.
But we were recommissioning this, taking it out of mothballs, a AM minesweeper, which is the largest of the small minesweepers. In other words, you had 2 types of minesweepers. One were the wooden ships, and the others were the metal ships.
And after you had recommissioned it, what happened?
Well, we went through the usual recommissioning exercises. We went through fleet training, fleet exercises. We sailed from Orange, Texas to Panama City, around to Norfolk, Virginia, and then on up to Newport, Rhode Island. And we had exercises with submarines that came down from New London. And then I came back to Panama City and was ordered to the Commander Mine Run 3 in Japan, and that's where I spent the rest of the Korean War.
Was this in Sasebo,
Right.
the port city?
Right.
How far you patrolled the east side or the west side of
Well,
Korea?
we patrolled both sides. We were on an LSD, which was the command ship for the Commander Mine Run 3, and we had about 8 minesweepers that patrolled both east coast and west coast of Japan, and our job was to report the activities of the day, and we had the commander of the mine squadron with us, and we were stationed primarily in Pusan Harbor. I don't know whether you're familiar with Pusan, but it's up above the 38th parallel, and we would rotate on ships every month. We would rotate our command to a different LSD every month, and we'd come back to Japan for a couple of weeks and then go back out. Got out to Wonsan.
When you patrolled the east side of Korea, did you go up as far as Gangneung?
We went as far as Vladivostok.
As far as Vladivostok, wow.
And we were fired on at Vladivostok because we got a little too close, and our ship was hit, and one fellow was injured, but nobody was killed. No, we went up to Hungnam, Chongjin, and I don't know what's above, except I think Chongjin, Vladivostok is just above Chongjin.
Wow, that's interesting. You really patrolled that area.
It was pretty exciting. The battleship Iowa was along with us, you know. We traveled in that group, and because I think they were trying to go. Well, the battleship was bombarding the shore batteries, but we had to patrol to sweep out the mines for the other ships that went in close to shore.
You commanded one of these ships?
No. I was I was the communications officer on Commander Mine Squadron 3. No, I was. We had an admiral aboard and a commander, a lieutenant commander, and I guess I was down the list there somewhere.
That's interesting. Then how long were you in the Far East? When did you go to the Far East? What month?
Actually, I arrived there in January 1952. The war was still going on at that time, and then my tour of duty was up in June of 1952. But so I spent essentially 2 years, I think.
What was the reaction of people to your service in Korea after you got home?
Well, it was interesting. Korea was it wasn't first page news. Most of the news was on. When I got home, I would try to keep up with the activities in Korea, and it was the forgotten war in a sense, and because we always thought that we had done such a good job out there, and never got any not notoriety, but any
recognition, for
publicity, I guess you might say. So it was on the back page of the newspapers.
Did you ever see the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. It's been a while, and I don't really recall all the.
It was a squad on patrol. Don't you remember those guys were tall figures?
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember the.
And then there was a
picture on the wall.
A stone where they said freedom is not free. I remember that distinctly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember that, yes.
It's interesting. It took them a long while to discover, well, we did do something after all. What did you do after you got out, Paul?
Well, when I came home, it was too late for me to get into medical school. So I went back to the University of North Carolina and took straight chemistry courses to improve my chances of getting into medical school. And in the meantime, I went back to work for American Cyanamid in their New York office at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. And then in 1954, I was accepted at the University of Virginia Medical School. So I started my medical training in September of 1954.
Where did you meet Mary?
Well, she was starting her training at the University of Virginia also. We had both been out of school for about 7 years, so it was, we were older students, so to speak. And that's where we met. And we were married in our junior year there in medical school.
Medical school. What year was that?
1957.
1957. And when did you move to Crawfordsville?
In 1962, I interned in the University of Kansas at Kansas City. Then I took my residency in Indianapolis for 3 years at the Med Center there. And then I met Dr. Jack Alexander, who used to come over as staff at the med school, and he offered me a partnership in Crawfordsville, and I was very happy about that.
Did you have any very memorable experiences while on patrol?
Except being shot at, no, not really. Exploding mines. The Russians, actually, they were Russian mines. And we had an underwater demolition team that would go out and recover the mines. The Russians said they were not involved, but we recovered a 500-pound mine, which they brought home, and they dismantled and found some of the instructions on the inside of the mine written in Russian. So that was exciting.
Yes, it was.
But outside of that, it was a fairly routine activity.
Were you, your duties on the minesweeper were through that duration, were they principally again in communications?
Yes. Actually, we compiled all the reports of the activities of the ship every day and sent them out for, Fox, on the Fox schedule. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. That's the Fox is the radio communication schedule for all of the Navy, and we compiled the information from all the ships that were sweeping in the areas, and sent them to the Central Command. And most of the activity was decoding and encoding messages back and forth to the, I think it was the 7th Fleet that was out there at that time.
What was the complement of that ship? How big was the ship, and how many men aboard?
Oh boy. Well, Elena's ship dock is an LSD, and it, I guess it has about 100 men on the staff itself. Our command group, the minesweeping command group, had about 15 men, and actually the reason we're in an LSD is because along with the minesweepers themselves that patrol the coast, we had minesweeping boats, which were really large barges that were able to go up into the small rivers and small areas, because they would float their mines down the rivers, and there was no telling where they would end up. So the minesweeping boats were assigned to the LSD, and we carried about 6 minesweeping boats. And occasionally I went out with the minesweeping boats, but it wasn't really very dangerous. Well, it could have been, but it didn't seem to be that time. You're fearless at that age.
So does the LSD serve as sort of a tender for the sweeps themselves?
Right. Not a tender for the sweeps, but a tender for the boats. The boats were they were barge-sized boats, but they had their own tenders, and they were stationed in Sasebo, Japan, also. So we would come back every month to Sasebo, spend maybe a few days or a week, even a week, and then go back out again.
And these boats that would go up the river, how would they sweep mines?
Well, they had minesweeping equipment. I don't know whether minesweeping is kind of like mowing the lawn. You mow the furthest point first, and then you work your way in, and you have a little trailing sort of a pontoon with a cable on it, and the cable had a cutter on it, little cutters, and when it catches a mine, it cuts the mine, breaks the mine's cable, because the mine is attached to a sort of a weight, and then when it cuts the cable, it pops up to the top of the surface, and then you detonate it with rifles, which is kind of crude, but and I did a little bit of that just because I didn't really have any activities when the sweepers were sweeping. As part of the staff, we were able to do most anything we wanted as far as activity is concerned.
So were these barges, were they wooden?
Yes.
Oh. And so they could, unless they struck one, I suppose they could pass over them without
right.
setting them off.
And they were very light, so you have to hit a mine give it a pretty good shot. You know, it has little fingers on it. Probably you've seen pictures of it.
Yes.
And that sets up a chemical reaction, and the mine explodes. That's the detonator. But even the boats, we lost no boats. None of the boats. I don't know how many mines they were able to take care of, but the minesweeping, the boat people were really pretty tough individuals.
Did you ever get into Pusan Harbor or Incheon?
Yeah, we got to Pusan, we got to Mokpo, and
Mokpo,
I think, was
on the southern coast.
It's way down the
way
bottom,
down
right?
there.
Right. Pusan, and actually we did get into Incheon, I think, at one time. I think that was, I'm not sure exactly what time it was, but there wasn't anything going on at the time. But we were involved with British ships, actually there was a Cambodian ship at that time that was in the area. So we kept in contact with everybody. I remember one incident in Pusan Harbor. We thought one of the British ships was under fire because they were firing, and so we called over and asked if they needed any help, and said no, they were giving a 21 gun salute for the Queen's birthday. And that was exciting.
So what rank did you leave active service with?
I was lieutenant senior grade.
And did you then go into the reserves? And were you active in the reserves?
I was active in the reserves between my tour between World War II and the Korean War. After that, when I went to medical school, I decided I didn't have time for the reserve, so I...
And you obviously fulfilled your
Right.
requirements.
Right. Essentially, that's why I was recalled.
So you came to Indiana to do your residency, that's what...
Right.
You said.
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And then you practiced in Crawfordsville, how many years before your retirement?
I think it was 26 years.
26.
I retired in 98.
Now, you were born in New Jersey?
Born and brought up.
Mm-hmm. And
I was born in the house and brought up in the house that I grew up in, and left home at 17 and never returned.
Yeah. Well, what did your father do?
My father was an accountant in New York City, in the downtown where 9/11 was, and I worked there during the summertime, just doing odd jobs.
And what did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother who went into the Air Force in was commissioned in the Air Force in 1941. He was 8 years older than I, and he graduated from the University of Iowa, from Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa, and he was stationed mostly in the United States, except during the Berlin airlift. He flew B-29s.
Into Tempelhof.
Right, yeah. But he was an instructor from 1942. Well, he was a career Air Force man, and he retired as a full colonel.
Now, your family consists of, how many children do you have?
We have 4. We have Will, who's the oldest, Julie, Wendy, and Amy. And we have 11 grandchildren.
That's excellent.
Now, are you, in your retirement, what kind of activities are you involved in?
Well, right now I'm mostly a housekeeper, a gardener, and a golfer. I used to be a tennis player, but since my heart surgery in 1950, I lost some vision. 2000. I lost some vision, so I don't play tennis anymore. But I can see to play golf, so I enjoy playing golf.
Sometimes maybe it helps not to see so well.
Right. I have that problem.
And of course, your wife, as you mentioned, is a medical doctor as well, and she's been involved in the past in
Christian Nursing Service.
Well, she was one of the original. She was a charter member of the Christian Nursing Service, and started the Well Baby Clinic in 1968, I think, somewhere around there. I can't remember all that activities. And she worked in the clinic 2 days a week, I think, for 25 years also. And retired just before I did.
Well, your family's made quite a contribution to our community. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Alex, do you have anything more you want?
Thank you for coming in, Paul. It's been a privilege knowing you all these years, and this is part of the history of our country. And thanks for consenting to come in for the interview.
Oh, you're very welcome. Brought back a lot of memories.